So, welcome to the show, Anna. It's so great to see you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm really, really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I know you're in Oakland, California. Is that right?
I am. I'm in Oakland and work throughout the Bay Area.
Nice, nice. And I remember we connected on Town Squared, which is a local website for business owners. And it's just a lot of great conversations happening there. So I was really glad you piped up and said you wanted to talk about burnout prevention. I think the information is going to be really valuable to people today.
Yeah, I really, what struck me about some of the posts that you had on there, I know that you've been interviewing people from all different business backgrounds, and I really appreciate how you try to incorporate mindfulness into those conversations. And I would like to see business owners incorporate burnout prevention as part of their business plans. I think it's something that is often neglected, and we can all be a little bit vulnerable to the kind of machoism of I can work the latest and I can work the hardest and I can respond the fastest to that email.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, you're going to run out of gas. And so you're not going to be an effective business owner or just person in your life and all of your relationships if you don't have that burnout prevention piece. And I've had to learn that lesson many times throughout my career. So it's definitely something that, I picked this specialty for selfish reasons for sure, but it's something I really enjoy talking about with others.
That's awesome. And I think I totally agree that it's the predominant point of view. You've got to get out there and hustle if you're an entrepreneur and, just work 10, 20 hours a day. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not sustainable. So
Mm-hmm.
I think this is going to be a really provocative discussion with you and one that's needed out there in the entrepreneur small business community.
Mm-hmm. And I
So
think
let's,
also something that's helpful to understand when you think about the frame of burnout prevention is that, usually when you say burnout prevention, I think people immediately think of work. And one thing I really like about specializing in burnout prevention is it's stigma free. So, we can all talk about how stressed out we are at work, but when it kind of goes beyond that, there's a little bit more stigma attached to it. And so I think of work stress almost like the tip of the iceberg, and it's the part that we can all see and we can all talk about. But, if you have stress at work, you probably have stress in other parts of your life too. So it's also important when we think about kind of burnout prevention as business owners, thinking about burnout prevention as parents and siblings and friends and global citizens. And so there are so many different layers to burnout prevention.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to read your bio so everyone
Great.
is familiar with who you are.
Great. Thank you.
So, Anna Lindberg Cedar is a Bay Area psychotherapist who specializes in burnout prevention. And Anna provides counseling to adults, teens, couples, and executive teams. Many of Anna's burnout prevention strategies are drawn from dialectical behavior therapy, a counseling style that combines cognitive behavioral therapy and other change-based skills with mindfulness and acceptance-based strategies to help you lead a more balanced life. Anna received her Master of Science in Social Work and Master of Public Administration from Columbia University. And after 20 years of working as a helping professional, Anna has learned a thing or two about burnout prevention and enjoys sharing these insights with others. So let's dive right in. As you were saying, you have experienced burnout. Let's first of all just touch on, how did you get started as a therapist? And what interested you in this helping profession?
Well, becoming a therapist was kind of midway through my nonprofit career. So I started out actually as a community organizer doing public health campaigns throughout Latin America. And that experience definitely opened my eyes to some of the disparities that are out there. And I think I was naive enough at the time to think I could save the world and, fix all of it and tackle everything. So I, quickly started out as a young professional, as a workaholic, and, volunteered for fun, and all of my social networks were tied to work. And, I felt really passionate about the work. And so in a way that was really satisfying, and, I fueled me for a long time. And, I took on leadership roles, and, was really living kind of my dream job, which was great. But, over time I became a specialist in trauma work, and, was no longer working in Latin America, but here in the United States, seeing survivors of torture from all around the world as a program director at a torture treatment center, and then later worked with homeless and low-income families, and rape crisis counselor. So, what drew me to the work was seeing the incredible resilience that people have in the face of incredible and infinite forms of adversity. But that also takes a toll on you. And I, saw it in the clients that I was working with, and definitely felt the effects for myself, which is what pushed me to grad school to get those degrees and get the training, so that I could come back to the community and continue working on an individual level. But I also became much more passionate about, working with people who are serving the broader communities. So kind of a train the trainer role, so that if you're doing psychological first aid, you have, the tips and tricks that are going to help you sustain. Right. So I made sure that my degree was in evidence-based counseling, so that I'm using strategies that are proven to be effective, which includes mindfulness and dialectical behavior therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, all those tricks and tools. So what has sustained me in this work is seeing that there are things that are effective for people to overcome burnout. And yes, I've had to kind of run off to Argentina for a month and, quit a few jobs over the years to learn kind of the puzzle pieces that work best for my burnout prevention. And now I'm very fortunate to have that specialty. So it fuels me in the work that I do.
That's great. And I'd love to get into those puzzle pieces, because I know that's going to be really useful information to people. But as I'm listening to you, I hear you saying, you've had this experience with burnout. Mm-hmm. And I think often the help that we receive from others that is most useful, that can really transform us, is, coming from someone like yourself who's shared the same experience and mm-hmm. been able to transform themselves personally. So I'd love to hear, what, if you could just share a little bit about your experience, how you found yourself in a place of burnout, and how did you change that?
I think working as a helping professional, you definitely can fall victim to survivor's guilt, right? Or anyone in a place of privilege, which includes business owners, right? So you set your own goals and your own budget, and you decide where to allocate funds. And, in the nonprofit world, there's always more need, and it's a question of how late am I going to stay at work to meet those needs? And, the same questions as a business owner of, how far can I lower that price to someone who really, really needs the service and can't afford it? And then also trying to make ends meet yourself, right? So you're caught in those moral dilemmas a lot. And, I realized I was burned out when I would, maybe I would be good at keeping work at a certain number of hours, but really my brain was still working, and, waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, oh, I forgot to call so-and-so, or they could really use that piece of advice or resource. And also feeling it in the body, I think, is just, that's where burnout lives, is, tension, headaches, irritability. You can ask my friends and family. They can point out exactly different types of burnout in my life because of how, my relationships are affected. And I think one of the most common signs of burnout I hear people talk about is that instant replay. So you may have had a difficult experience during the workday, and then afterwards, you just kind of continue replaying that experience over and over in your mind. So in terms of thinking about tips and tricks, I think, the most important one is paying attention to burnout and asking yourself, what are signs? And people generally know, I don't feel like myself, or other people have made comments that, are you okay? And, not having good boundaries and just letting work spill over into your life. So recognizing that. And then also recognizing kind of the biology of burnout. So one of the most helpful places to start is understanding the body's fight or flight response. So I think most of us have a basic understanding, or we remember from science class back in the day, but it's worth kind of reminding ourselves that our ancestors, their types of stress was, fighting off tigers and bears in the jungle. And your only defense mechanisms were either to fight the bear or run away, right? That's how we solve problems. And so today, luckily, at least where I live, they don't have bears here. They're a little bit farther away. But, if I turn in an assignment and I, wish that the project had come out better, or I get critical feedback about my work, or I'm just, exhausted and, would like to do better. That's enough to trigger the body's fight or flight response. So your body literally thinks you're fighting a bear and is going to start, those racing heartbeats, and your breathing's going to quicken, and your muscles are going to tense up, and the cortisol and adrenaline are coursing, which are powerful drugs. And that's getting you ready to fight the bear or run away. So, sad to say for your partner or your neighbors or whoever else kind of comes across your path, your coworkers, if you're stuck in fight or flight. And so kind of recognizing what those signs look like for you, and then being able to interrupt that with another powerful instinct, which is rest and digest. Rest and digest lets us recharge our batteries, improve our focus, because when we're stuck in fight or flight, a lot of the body's secondary functions just completely shut down. This is why people have problems with appetite or digestion, energy, sleep, focus, memory. People will tell them, it just seems like you're not there, right? And so those things can't operate because your body's using all those emergency chemicals in the lungs, heart, and, core muscle groups. Developing a routine of, mindfulness strategies, which of course is directing the attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment, as John Kabat-Zinn says, and using the 5 senses to soothe the body. So that could be through paced belly breathing, progressive muscle relax, really savoring a cup of tea, letting the mind wander, any kind of observing practice that brings you to the present moment is definitely where I start with all of my recommendations, is having a core set of relaxation skills that's going to help you in the moment. And what research shows about that is that, when you experience intense emotion, that memory is encoded more permanently in your memory. So when you have a moment of stress at work, or a deadline, or a difficult conversation with customer service, or whatever it is, the more that you're able to soothe your body in a moment of stress, it's going to leave less of a footprint for you later, right?
Interesting.
And remember that fight or flight is designed to keep us safe. So if you are in immediate danger, call 911, do what you need to do. And I find actually in a moment of stress, it's helpful to ask yourself, am I safe? Right? And if the answer is no, get to safety, do whatever you need to do. But if the answer is yes, I'm safe in this moment, right? Even if you don't know an hour from now if you're going to be safe, but in this moment, then it's a great time to soothe the body with one of those relaxation strategies.
Wow, that is really useful. I had never heard that before about, those exact steps of what you take when you're in fight or flight. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about, how we can build sustainable businesses. That's one reason I was really interested in talking to you. So, how can we get to that place where this is a habit and we don't have to get into this fight or flight? Like, we're building a habit of self-care. And so we're not experiencing, having to deal with these burnout symptoms.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think it's a layered answer. So, I have both an MSW and an MPA, which means that I am interested both in the micro and the macro. So I think one answer to your question is we definitely need a broad cultural shift so that we all buy into this concept and we know that it's better for our own sustainability. A lot of people need excuses to practice burnout, like it's better for your bottom line or your family will thank you. But really the truth is we all just deserve to lead healthy and happy lives. So I think, making it a selling point in your business that, look, I practice these hours of operation and I will definitely get back to you during that time, but otherwise I'm not available. And that's so that I can be a better service provider to you and that I can deliver higher quality service. And especially if you're a manager, it's so that you can set a precedent for your staff. And turnover is incredibly expensive. So some studies show that it takes an average of 6 months for staff to get trained up, and that's very pricey. So yes, burnout prevention definitely makes good business sense. And so you want to think about the structures that you're setting in place and that your community is setting in place and your networks that you're talking about it on Town Squared and other networks. But then we also have to realize that in the meantime, it comes down to self-preservation, right? So that's why we do call it self-care. And sometimes I push back on that term a little bit because I think we need to take care of each other as well. As a society, we need to build those systems in place. But in the meantime, it has to start with self-care. And so I think scheduling it into your day is one of the most important pieces. I see two really common mistakes when people come to see me and they're starting to develop a self-care routine. The most common mistake is I forgot. I didn't write it down like all the other things I needed to do. And the other most common mistake is, well, I did it once, but I still have stress, or there are other more important things. And so it's not a consistent practice. And we know that, you maximize the effects of self-care if it is a daily, consistent routine.
And it seems like we have to really intently have that mindset shift of like, this is a priority. This is what I need to do to build a sustainable business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sometimes people come to me and their goal is, I want to get everything marked off my to-do list by the end of the day. And we have to kind of realign expectations and try to figure out, okay, maybe you're not going to make it to 100% of the things on the list, maybe 80. And how do we make it so that that last 20% isn't keeping you up at night and interrupting your thoughts and other activities of enjoyment? How do we make it so that the 80% that you did with intention, right? And so you're not just kind of scurrying around stuck in fight or flight, because again, your cognitive functioning is not operating as well when you're operating on that mode. You want to make it a plan and, start your day and say, okay, what are the 8 things I have to get done? What are the 2 things that are completely bonus? And where is that self-care piece? Because it has to be in there somewhere. Right. And, again, going back to the excuses of why we need to practice self-care, but people who do these kinds of practices definitely earn better, sleep better, abuse substances less, and it's saves you costs down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just makes it more enjoyable to run a business. Like, I just feel like, why would you want to get yourself to that place? So unfortunately, we learn from experience a lot of times, at least myself personally, like I've experienced burnout. And so now that's how I'm like really prioritizing these self-preservation tips and making sure I build that into my day. Definitely not perfectly. And I totally get it. The entrepreneurs, I completely identify with, having deadlines and trying to meet big goals. That's when it can fall by the wayside. I'm a video producer, so, I typically have several deadlines a week, and, have to keep meeting them. So it can definitely be challenging.
Yeah.
But I know one article you wrote I found was really cool. I believe it was for the website Mighty. You wrote an article about different types of apps out there that we could use. Would you be able to recommend just a few apps that people can use for self-care?
Yeah, there are so many great apps out there. I made a list of 12 or 15 or something like that, but there are, thousands more. I think one really great kind of terrifying app to start with is Moment. And if you ever just want to be appalled at your own screen usage, start with Moment. And it tracks, how many hours a day you're on your phone or how many times you pick up your phone. And you can also set limits for yourself and your family if you want to share that data with others, and set goals. And so kind of coming back to that intentionality, how do you make sure that you're, if that's one of your goals, off your phone more and, onto other activities. I think that's a really good one. And then there are a million and one different relaxation apps out there. One that actually I didn't put on the list, but I came across recently is called Simple Habit. And those are 5-minute meditations. I believe you can set an alarm on most of the apps so you can, again, remember to do that. I really like Relax Melodies. It's a sound-based relaxation app where you can blend even really random sounds like monks chanting with cats purring.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my
Nice.
mom is a doula, and she actually uses it for women in labor to soothe pain. And I've used it with folks managing chronic pain and, depression, anxiety. And then mood tracking apps are really good. You can, it'll prompt you to put your mood in at certain times a day. That's really, really helpful for identifying moments of stress. And, if you get stressed out when you're checking your email every day, okay, maybe you need to reorganize that routine, incorporate a little bit of a treat or a coffee or a tea to kind of soothe some of that stress. So it helps you. There's so many different great choices out there for logging and identifying your feelings and
I had no idea.
giving you suggestions. Yeah. I also like Allo. I don't think it's an app yet, but it's a daily email. I found them on Medium, and they're kind of in startup phase and trying to get organized. I hope they get a lot of support because they will send you, daily or weekly checklists of, have you tried this today? Have you done some deep breathing? Have you showered? Have you, gone for a walk? And just really, really simple suggestions.
Wow, technology is so amazing these days.
Yeah.
There's really an app for everything.
Yeah. And besides apps, I use a lot of podcasts. I have a whole post on podcast therapy. And, I think podcasts are a great way of making people feel more connected and hearing firsthand experiences of things that sometimes it feels like we're the only ones going through that experience. Death, Sex, and Money is a really great example of that. But just, getting technology can be really helpful to connect people and resources. So it's really cool to see that. I use a lot of technology when I'm counseling people, and I'll send measures back and forth to track stress. And so we can see progress over time. We can test out different ideas and interventions. Because dialectical behavioral therapy and mindfulness are all evidence-based counseling methods. So that means they've been tested for, with folks going through exactly or very similar problems, that you might be facing. So it's good to have technology like apps and podcasts and all of that can just increase our knowledge base.
Yeah, absolutely. And just help us feel connected. I think that's what I'm really getting is I have so many apps. My phone is full. So I think I'm going to have to cut back and focus more on some of these self-care apps just because, I typically work several hours of the day, just
Yeah.
working from my home office, like just having those reminders, even an email coming in of, oh yeah, you've got to focus on self-care today. I just think it's really helpful to know that support is out there somewhere.
Yep. I actually have a newsletter called the Selfcare Moment where I send out, at least once a week, different either relaxation strategies or links to podcasts like yours that are doing such a great job of making those connections in community, and, whatever it takes for you to remember, right? So if it's an email or I think having a goal buddy is really helpful, a best friend, and say like, look, I'm really trying to make sure that I turn off my laptop by 8 p.m., right? And you can text each other and say, how's that goal going? To setting an alarm or taking notes. I take notes in my Google Calendar and make sure that I can see the self-care just like I can see all the meetings and appointments that I have. So it has to be balanced, right? So whatever it takes, if it's visual, if it's, someone asking you, you got to be present with that goal.
Definitely. I'm hearing a combination of the technology as well as like a buddy, some support system. People can also go to you for therapy or find their own therapist if they're in need of it. Is there anything else you would like to add? Anything we missed in terms of burnout prevention?
I think it is good to mention therapy. Some people are more kind of accustomed or comfortable with the idea of therapy. I think there's unfortunately still a lot of stigma out there, and also just a lot of misconceptions. So a lot of people, when they think of therapy, they think that they have to go for a really long time or that they have to talk about their childhood. There's a lot of different kinds of therapy out there. And so it is a little bit of kind of a chemistry of finding the right therapist for you. But just know that brief therapy is an option. So some people come in and they just want to improve their sleep. So they might have 2 or 3 sessions to focus on that. Or, they had a traumatic incident recently and they just want to get over that experience, or a grief or a transition. And, I like the kind of the way we talked about it before of puzzle pieces, because it's helpful to go to just someone with an outside perspective who can look at those puzzle pieces and say, okay, it sounds like you're doing this part really, really well. How can we boost that and combine it with this other idea that maybe you've done in the past, but you just have completely forgotten was an option, right? So I think outside perspectives are great, whether it's a therapist or, a friend or a mentor or a colleague, a consultation group. Those are the people who are going to keep us accountable, it's so, that's a real privilege that we should all take advantage of.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So where can people go to find you, Anna? What is your website? And you mentioned the self-care newsletter. How can they sign up for that?
They can definitely sign up on my website. It would be a great place to get to know me better. So my website is Anna Cedar, just like the tree, ANNACEDAR.com. And you'll find links there to my writings on Medium, The Mighty. I have lots of blog posts on there. I like to interact with my readers, and a lot of my blog posts come from their suggestions. So I would love to hear reactions to the conversation today, and just people's experiences with burnout and what the tips that they've learned, because I find that people have a lot of inner wisdom that it's really great to hear about. So I would love to connect with people on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. I'm on all those places, but you can find me on my website for sure.
Absolutely. And I just had an idea that, we could give people a challenge. So anyone listening to this, if you could tweet to both Anna and to myself and just let us know, what is one self-care tip, a new self-care tip that you're going to implement today.
I love that.
To take care of yourself.
Yes. I look forward to hearing some suggestions as well, and what's working for people and anything new that they took from the conversation. I think that's a great way of keeping us all accountable.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for taking time out of your day. And I hope everyone will go check out her website and follow her on social media. And yeah, again, just let us know what's working for you and what value you've got out of the information that she shared.